Hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. Thanks for joining us for this exciting book launch of Rivals to Lovers. Before we begin, I want to mention a couple of other upcoming events. We're going to be selling books at an event at the Marshalltown Public Library with Denise next Thursday, August 28th at 6 p.m. And then on Saturday, August 30th, we will be hosting Arbor Stone at 3 p.m. And you can find all the details on our website. You can pick up a flyer at the register or sign up for our newsletter to keep up on all of our events. Now, on to tonight's program. It is my pleasure to welcome two delightful romance writers for what's sure to be a spicy time. Elise Wayland is a romance author who lives right here in the Midwest and also writes humor and essays. And her book, Rivals to Lovers, is her first rom-com. Elise is going to be joined in conversation by fellow author Denise Williams, who also has a new book, Just Our Luck. So please give a warm Beaverdale Books welcome for Elise and Denise.
Well, if you all had not captured this already, we think we are hilarious. So we hope that you all do too. And I'm so excited to be here to talk about Rivals to Lovers. This book is such a delight, and I had a chance to read it early, so, no big deal. Give us a high-level pitch of the book, and then you're going to do a little bit of a reading to give us some of the contents.
Sure. Okay, so Rivals to Lovers is a big bookish romance nerd book. It's about two competing rivals who both fell in love with the same classic book. They are competing to adapt that book with the estate. So this book technically hasn't had the copyright expire yet. So they go to the estate for a weekend to demonstrate their work. And of course, sparks fly, tension builds. So they have to decide sort of what they're going to do in order to win this competition against each other, because there's only one book deal at stake. Yeah. So this part here takes place during their weekend at the estate. They have taken a little afternoon apart from reading their parts of the book to the estate representative, and they're walking around in this classic mansion, talking to each other, and they are talking about a class that Mo, who's the main female character, took in college. She's trying to sort of throw him off his guard a little bit, and talking about how it's a very feminist book class where they talked about like bodies and women's bodies in the class. What novels did you read? As Wes asked, he sat on the bench at the far end of the ballroom. His body language invited her to join him, and after a second she did. A lot of the classics, Little Women, Middlemarch, Pride and Prejudice. It's been a few years since I read any of those, but I don't actually remember any mention of periods, he said. Mo laughed. I know. The class focused on the erasure of natural body processes, periods, pregnancy, menopause, even in these texts heavily read by women. Sometimes these older books were much more about the mind of the woman and didn't mention her body, at least not in the normal mechanics of it. It wasn't considered genteel to talk about, Wes said. She could smell him from his position, a citrusy, piney smell that could only be from cologne, unless he naturally smelled that good, which would be royally unfair. Kind of like masturbation, he said, jarring her from her thoughts, which veered too close to his body anyway. She choked on a laugh. I mean, absolutely. Tell me Ahab wouldn't have been wanking off every day, Moby Dick or no Moby Dick. I mean, a dude at sea? Jane Eyre totally would have been rubbing one out on the regular, Mo said. A young woman with a tough job and a hot boss, that's only natural, he finished. He stood, breaking eye contact and rubbing his hands on his jeans. Stress does that to some people, Mo said to his back. She could sense the warmth of his body just a foot away. His eyebrow quirked. Does what to some people? It was her turn to stand. She wanted to see if he would step back from her, but he held his ground. You know. No, tell me. Makes them horny, Mo said, not seeing a point to avoiding the word. Oh, I see. I thought that stress made people OD on edibles. My mistake. He deadpanned. She did that the night before. She shoved him lightly. The hardness of his chest under her hand made her stomach a liquid. He must have seen something in her face, because his laughter stopped. His glance snagged hers, his eyes brown and flinty. And things progress.
Ooh.
I deeply love that you wrote that scene, and for anybody else just sort of in the bookstore shopping, I hope that that lures them over. We're fun when we talk about romance. So this is your debut romance. Take us back to the beginning. What led you to write romance? How did you get there?
Absolutely. I started coming to romance as a romance reader. I fell in love with the genre as a reader. It was something that I had never really turned to in my book collection until around COVID, actually. I think a lot of us were searching for something more comfortable, something warm, something with a happy ending. But also, when I started reading romance, I found all the depth there and all of the characters and the people I didn't always get to see have happy endings in other types of books that I enjoyed. And I just loved the ability to read those worlds, and I wanted to join the conversation after inhaling them so feverishly.
Who were some of your first inhales to live?
Yeah. I feel like it's a drug test. I mean, I have to say I started in the genre with Emily Henry, and I think that after I read Beach Read, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is great. Like I enjoyed the experience of reading that book so much. And then another one that really caught me early on was Spoiler Alert. I loved the way that Olivia Day sort of dove into fandom and explored books within books in that book, and I just loved how smart it was. So I'd say
Olivia Dade is just one of my favorites, and she's got a pretty hefty backlist now, both from traditional publishing, which you may find on the shelves, and then some of her indie published stuff too. My very favorite was Teach Me.
Ooh, I
And
haven't read
it's
that
one that a lot of folks haven't read, but it's about two high school history teachers. I think the AP history teacher and the regular history teacher, and she's this kind of ball-busting, Olivia Dade would say shrewy woman in like the most positive way. And he is this very soft man, and everybody's in therapy, and it's just like so warm and gentle and sexy and romantic, but it's in school, and it's just very lovely, and I think that's part of what draws you in with Olivia's work. It's just lovely.
Absolutely. I love, like, in romance, it doesn't just become about the characters' relationships for the romantic happy ending. There's always so much else going on. Friendships, taking care of friendships together, building found families, somebody achieving their career goals. And Olivia Dade is really good at that.
This was not going to be an Olivia Dade fan club moment, but, that's just how we
Welcome, you joined it.
So this is your debut romance, but you've written humor and nonfiction and kind of nonfiction essays. You've written sort of women's fiction, literary fiction. Talk about how it was different for this book, either in writing, promotion, etc. Anything in the
Yeah. I'd say that, like, the actual drafting process, there are more, like, beats to romance. So you can kind of understand more of how the book's going to be constructed, and you already know that there's going to be a happy ending. You know what you're working toward, and so figuring out what to show on page that like makes you want to kick your feet, like the things that you as a reader would sit down and enjoy the most. It's just such a pleasure for the process. I do write like literary fiction, and I write women's fiction. I hate that term for the genre, but like book club fiction. And sometimes when you sit down to write something more serious, or even not more serious, but just in a different genre, you're pulling at like the absolute worst moments every single time that you're sitting down to write. And there's definitely points of this book where they explore deeper concepts, but I didn't feel like I was sitting down and picking at scabs all day. Like when you're writing nonfiction, for instance, sometimes you're exploring like your personal past, and that's so hard. Romance always felt good to sit down and work on, even if I was stuck in a plot hole, I'd say.
I have to tell you, in 6 years of doing events, I don't know that the word scab has ever come up before in conversation. I love that. Like, it was perfection.
Checking it off your list. More off-putting words that I'll just add in.
So in romance, we love love tropes, and we'll get into tropes here in a little bit more, but to me, Rivals to Lovers is a god tier level trope, and not only is it the title of the book, that's the core trope that we're sort of looking at. What inspired you to write a Rivals to Lovers story? Like, how did you figure out whether that would be their dynamic?
Yeah, so this book actually came about, I'm going to do the long story. I'm going to do the long, zoom back, kind of where this book came from. So this book came from a conversation I was having with my agent when I was working on a different genre of project. And she made a throwaway comment that she had to get off the phone because she had read something in Publishers Marketplace that day that someone was doing an adaptation of Rebecca. And she's like, I actually represent Daphne du Maurier's estate, and that's not licensed yet. Like, I have to go chase that down and figure out what's going on. And I was like, bing, like, that is so interesting. Like, this is someone's job, that she has to be the person who chases that down and says, no, you can't actually adapt that, those rights are not out. And then I started to think, like, what would it be like to be competing to try to get your book published? What would it be like to have to try to get those rights or get the state to sort of move on that? And of course, this idea of competition came into play almost immediately there. The original title for the book was Adaptation, and I liked the idea of people adapting a classic book, but then also the idea of like adapting in a relationship to one another. The rivalry is less enemies and more like sort of that spiteful look you would give the boy in class who raised his hand just a second before you. Like, there's very little enmity here, but there are real stakes. So like, there really is one person who's going to walk away with their book here. There are very real power dynamics at play. And I think that idea of like a competition inherently adds the tension. And tension makes it more fun to write romance, I think.
Oh yeah, the tension is
it's the key.
It's the juice. It's the good stuff.
It's the juice.
I had a teacher at Iowa State. He taught 17th century British literature, Alan Mickey. And I learned two things from Alan Mickey. One, well, many things, but two things have stuck with me over the last 25 years. One was the difference between British and French landscape architecture in the 17th century.
Amazing.
When I say this is my Roman Empire, I think about this at least once a day. I don't know anything about landscape architecture.
Does it have to do with shrubbery?
It has to do with the manicuredness and the natural.
Okay.
I could get into a whole lecture about it. But the other thing was he did a whole lecture on tension and release.
Yes.
How all good things are tension and then release. Good food, you get like a tension of flavors and then a release. Good music, you get like chord tension and then release. Good sex, you get tension and then release. Bad sex, you get tension, no release. That is a direct quote from Alan Mickey. And, you know, when we talk about tension in writing, and I'm sure he'd be very pleased to know that's what I talk about him often. Okay, so this is where this book came from, this idea of rivals to lover. For you, is that a favorite trope?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think I am a sucker for enemies to lovers, but I always am worried about like how much can you really solve over the course of one book, and like that true hatred gets me a little nervous sometimes. You know, nobody's family is deeply in jeopardy here, and you know, it's not blood feuds. We're not trying to solve Romeo and Juliet in these pages. But I would say I like Rivals to Lovers when it's done well, for sure.
I love true enemies, actually.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it works really well sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, I'm not resolved. I can't unsee what he said to you in chapter 1, actually.
So what are your least favorite? Audience members will be called on in a moment, so be thinking about your favorite or least favorite.
Yeah, least favorite. I mean, we've talked about this one, but I don't like pregnancy tropes, and I don't like secret baby. I don't like it because it's so much lying, and also then you just have this like prop of a child that you're like trying to work in. It doesn't ever hit for me.
Yeah, like I don't want any placenta in my romance.
No.
That's just my general rule of thumb. I'm in the same boat with those two.
Yeah.
Which I guess a secret baby could be like 20 years old.
It could be. It could be. There was placenta at some point. There's hidden placenta off-page. Off-page placenta. Checking that one off. Ooh.
How about for you all? Do you have a favorite or least favorite romance trope?
What's an auto-buy trope for you?
Auto-buy for me is enemies to lovers mixed with forced proximity. So, but I want true enemies. So, like, you kicked my grandmother off a cliff during an MMA exhibition fight, and now I must avenge you, but also we must be married so that we can inherit the MMA dojo. I don't know. You know, something like that. Like, I want true, like, disregard for each other at the beginning, and then forced to be together. Forced to be married is even better. Which is hard to write in a contemporary setting, because there are actually very few reasons people have to be married in a contemporary setting. You gotta get a little creative, but I don't do a lot of like bully romance or dark romance. Some people love that. It's totally their bread and butter. I can't. I think I was in counseling too long. And I'm just like, that's toxic. That's a red flag. What would your mother say?
I do love the protective element and the like. He's sort of feral for her, but again, that's not all I want to read. Feral. It's like, Lights Out is good. I enjoyed that one, but I think I don't only pick up dark romance for sure. Yeah.
Some of my students have not scandalized me, because that takes a lot, but I tell me what they're reading and I'm like, oh my gosh. A little part of me is like, are you okay? So if we look at the characters, we have Mo and Wes, who are really, has anybody read the book yet? So no spoilers, but I think you've built a relationship that's really fun, but with two really like distinct characters. So you've talked kind of a little bit about them, and feel free to share anything else, but who are you more like, Mo or Wes?
That's a great question. So Mo is from Iowa. She was raised with like pig farming in the background. She spent her summers like on her grandparents' pig farm, which is where she picks up this classic book for the first time. She's determined to sort of make something out of herself, and she's talented, but she like hasn't caught a break. She's had a book die on submission. She, just feels like she's sort of floundering along. Wes is a Nepo baby. His mom is basically Martha Stewart. So she owns a lifestyle brand. He's an agent as well. So he not only is a writer himself, he also has like a lot of connections in the publishing world and is sort of established. So I'd say like, I am not established in the writing world. I feel like Mo has this line where she says like, I don't know the names of the people I'm supposed to rub elbows with, and like even if I did, I would not get in the same room as those elbows. Like there's something I think that resonates with me very much. But I would say like Wes has this more self-deprecating sense of humor that I connect more with. So I'd say they're both a little bit of me for sure.
What's your favorite thing about each of them? Maybe something that we wouldn't know from the book jacket, or even maybe something we might not know as a reader, maybe something that got cut. But what's your just secret, like, little favorite thing about each of them?
Yeah. I love that Mo never doubts her talent. Like, there's never a point where she's like, well, what if my book is shit? Like, she's like, no, I actually, like, I'm really proud of this. I think it should have a real chance. Like, I think I did justice to it. I think this has merit. And I think there's something really to be said for that, especially if you're in a creative career. It's so easy to have those long, dark nights of the soul. And we don't really see Mo have that because of the quality of her work. Because of, like, publishing, yes, maybe she has some of that, but not because of the quality of her work. So I think that confidence is great. Wes, I think he has the ability to admit he's an asshole. And I respect that so much. Because there are many things that happen in this book that he makes a choice that's questionable. But he is able to figure out why what he did was so horrible and make it up eventually. And also not do exactly that thing again, which I appreciate.
So what's your strategy for making the physical and emotional connection feel believable? Is that something that as you're writing comes very naturally, or are those scenes you end up like tweaking and editing a lot?
I love that question. I did a lot of theater. So I did theater all the way through high school and college, beyond. And so dialogue comes really naturally for me. So I find that the characters sort of reveal themselves the most when I put them in a room and just have them be talking heads. And I'll go back through and I'll add sort of the physical dimensions, and I'll add the points where they're touching, and I'll add sort of the rest of it later, but I'll almost write it like a script. I'll sit down and just sort of talk it out, and feeling what it sounds like to be in the room with those people helps me figure out the rest of the dimensions of it. Although this was my first book that I've had like published sex scenes in, and that is a whole different process that like you have to map it out and like figure out like, does this make realistic sense? Like, is everything like, and to have to dissect your own sex scenes is such a funny experience to be like, okay, like, yes, this reads well. Okay, let me actually think through and like figure out the movement here. Well, especially after you go back and edit it, because you're not sitting it in one like straight spot. You're editing it a zillion times. So what if you cut a line and now
you don't know whose hands are where?
Exactly.
I definitely will be writing, and then my husband will look over and I'm just going like you're just figuring out like, did what I write just physically make sense? Could the bodies move that way?
Yeah.
And he doesn't ask anymore. But it's interesting to write love scenes that will be read widely, and it's my favorite part. But I think if you think about it too much, it's sort of like, oh, do other people think what I think is sexy is sexy? Is this an ah moment or an moment? And it's interesting to put that kind of vulnerability out in a way that's a little different than I imagine people who are writing murder. I don't know. Unless do other people murder the way that I do? So I have a little game here, and I've got two options, choose one or two, and because this is about an adaptation of a book that I think the last time I heard you speak, you described it as a book like you definitely would have been made to read in high school.
Yes, 100%.
I wrestled through my brain and found the books that I had to read in high school, and so I've called these the classics. And you're going to choose between one, and then alternating with that, we've got romance tropes, pretty specific romance tropes, and then we'll do sort of a best of. Okay, so Wuthering Heights versus Little Women.
I would say Wuthering Heights.
Secret Baby versus Large Age Gap. I think
large
I can
age
guess.
gap,
Okay.
yes.
Wuthering Heights versus Large Age Gap.
Oh, Wuthering Heights.
Okay. Great Expectations versus Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet.
Mafia romance, Amish romance.
Ooh. Mafia.
Interesting. Mafia romance or Romeo and Juliet?
Both. That would fit very nicely together, honestly.
I will accept it. Mafia RNJ.
Mafia RNJ.
Okay, Fahrenheit 451 versus Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice.
There's only one bed versus there's only one bed, but there's 5 people who need to fit into it.
Oh, dang! I'm old enough that I appreciate sleep. And I feel like with only one bed, like I always feel like, yes, they're going to have a great time, but also they're going to sleep eventually. 5 people, I actually just feel like after everything, that's a lot of people's snores to deal with. And like
they might tire themselves out quicker
I don't know,
with 5
man.
people, but
I'm just saying.
okay, there's only one bed.
Keep it simple.
So Pride and Prejudice versus there's only one bed.
There's only one bed.
The Scarlet Letter, Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre.
Vampire romance, shifter romance.
Ooh. Oh.
Are you familiar with shifter romance?
Shifter? I guess, yeah.
So then Jane Eyre versus shifter romance.
Oh, Jane Eyre. Oh, I'm such a like junior English class defender here.
Okay, so Wuthering Heights versus Mafia romance, Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, I'd say Mafia romance. Yeah, that sounds great.
And then Only One Bed versus Jane Eyre.
Only One Bed. Top tier trope.
So then we get down to Only One Bed versus Mafia Romeo and Juliet. You all may weigh in on this.
What would you pick?
I'm imagining one book out of that.
Yeah.
Out of all of them?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. If I had to pick, I'd probably say Mafia, Romeo and Juliet. And I feel like Katie Roberts actually probably written something exactly like that.
She probably did.
That I just need to go pick up on the shelf, actually.
Well, Romeo and Juliet really really lends itself to mafia
It
romance.
does.
You've got
That's what I'm
battling
thinking.
families.
Yeah.
Story.
100%.
They would
Actually,
have to
Olivia
share a
Blake
bed at one
has a
point.
book like that too.
So if
Yeah.
you could adapt any classic, what would it be?
Yeah. I took my stab at kind of a Great Gatsby-esque thing in this. So that was my sort of mishmash of Great Gatsby and Edith Wharton. I don't know if any of you had to read much Edith Wharton in high school, but Ethan Frome was a book that we had to read in AP class, and it was about a woman whose husband was cheating on her, and then the cheating husband and his mistress got in a sled accident, and she had to like caretake for them. And it was one of the worst things I had ever read in my life up to that point, and it just made me feel so many things about like, why do we even read? Because this made me so mad. And maybe that was the point. So I think Great Gatsby has done very, very well by other people lately. What would I want to do? I don't know. I would want to do a Lord of the Rings, like actual adaptation of it. I'd call that a classic by now.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
that would be fun. Set in maybe the future, maybe like a sci-fi Lord of the Rings. I don't know. I'd have to think through this.
Ooh.
Boom. I know.
Ah.
With what time? I don't know.
This could be written.
This could be written.
First, I would like Mafia, Romeo and Juliet, but
Yeah,
it could be
yeah,
short. It could be a
Yeah.
short retelling.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a book called Juliet that is kind of like that. I forget who wrote it. It's maybe 10 or 15 years old, but it looks at a modern day descendant of Juliet,
Nice.
and then she has to go back to Italy to find the descendant of Romeo, and then you also go back in time and see what happened as it happened in this Italian.
That's fun.
It's very fun. I can't remember the name of the author, but it kind of does get into that with the
Yeah.
mafia. It's very sexy. There's something in a pool. I don't remember anything more than that, but read it. You get to the pool scene and you'll know.
Was there anything about topiaries? Anything about landscaping?
No, nothing. And that's what I was really, of course, reading. Ironically, I've never once in my life picked up a book about this topic. It's just what Alan Mickey told me. So what was hard about writing this book and how did you overcome it?
Ooh. I would say I didn't believe him enough as I was going along. I think I had to make the characters work harder. I think it's easy to want in a romance things to end up great, but you need to put them through more. And so I kept having to figure out, okay, which stakes do I need to raise? And like not letting myself just gently guide them along. And sort of putting them in more peril throughout was definitely something I had to do. Shove them off small cliffs, for sure.
But they like pick each other up once
They
get
do.
off the
They
cliff
do.
eventually.
They do.
In just a minute, we'll turn over to you all's questions, so be thinking of those. But this is one of the favorite things I've ever been asked at a book reading. Tell us about the dedication. Why did you choose to dedicate the book in the way you did?
So the dedication is to my high school English teachers. And to romance authors. So for romance authors, it's because they led me to the genre, and I think that the romance community is unlike any other book community out there, not only in the readers, but also in the authors. The way that they support each other's work and stand up for each other's work and fight for the genre as a whole is just spectacular, and it doesn't really exist in other spaces in the same way. So that is part of the dedication there. My English teachers, because they made me read books that made me want to throw them at the wall, and taught me to be a careful and passionate reader. So I did email my teachers to tell them, like, hey, you're in the dedication for this book. Please do not feel like you have to read a smutty book about two writers. But like, I am very grateful for you. So I might be catching up with them when I head out to Pennsylvania for book event, because that's where I went to high school. So I'm looking forward to that.
I have had teachers read my sexy books. It's not as bad as you think. It's good. It's good.
Yes.
It's good.
It'll be
Gold
fine.
stars.
It'll be fine.
Well, I know you're working on a couple of things. In your ideal world, what's the next book that we see from you?
Yeah, hopefully the next book that you would see from me would be book 2 from this. The roommates are kind of a big part of this book. She has 2 really close friends, and one of them, I wrote a second chance romance for her. It's sort of a White Christmas sort of situation where she returns to her small town to put on a program for a retiring teacher. And yeah, lots of mayhem occurs. So we'll see if that gets picked up. I hope so. Yeah, I'm also working on historical fiction, but that would be a ways down the way. It's just in the drafting stage.
We had a writing retreat this summer at a very cool house in Waukee, Urbandale, close to my house, which was very convenient. But I got to hear a little bit of the historical romance when we were reading to each other, and it is chef's kiss, delightful. So be hoping for that. What questions do you all have? Because we've been talking a lot, and we can open it up. Actually, I'm a teacher. Let me do the thing I always do. Turn to somebody next to you, and we're going to give you about 27 seconds, and share with a partner a question that's maybe you're interested in. So go ahead. We won't be listening in. And then we'll start 27 seconds now.
Oh, I want to know about the cover. I always like to ask about the cover. That. Yeah.
That's a good
And that's what has distracted me.
What?
The book over Elise's shoulder is pink.
It's
And it catches my eye every time I turn.
Yeah.
So it's just right there.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's speaking to you.
What's funny is that this book is
like
just.
start to gravitate towards.
Have you read this?
I'm listening to more books that we know based on who's.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, what is your question?
Talk about the cover. I always love to hear how the cover came
I am
to
not telling the story.
be.
That is your story.
All right.
Tell us about the cover.
Yeah. So the cover is, I love the cover, how it turned out. I got to give a lot of input in terms of like
You did?
what the characters look like. I'm not a huge Swiftie, but now I realize she looks like Taylor Swift. So I'm like, well, that's nice for this summer. So it was nice to be able to sort of describe the characters and get them to look like I liked. They gave several sort of setups for the pages. One of them looked like they were outside at the estate, kind of looked like they were at boarding school. So we said, that's not going to work. This is not YA. Another one was like in like a room, just like with a book on the table, and that looked like they were in publishing. Like, you know, some things like they read really quickly as another situation, but I liked the way that this one was set up. It looked very library-like.
Yes.
I will say that in an early version of this cover that I sent to Denise and then Chloe Angel as well, it was not colored up yet, but the man character, as you can see here, he is standing back to back. He's got one hand just sort of that's closest to you, he's supporting the book, and then the other one you can't really see. In the original draft of this, the hand that was behind him, you could see part of it. It was in his pocket, like this, and his finger was such that it didn't look like a finger, and I didn't catch it right away. And then about an hour after I sent notes back to my editor, I zoomed in and I took a screenshot and I sent it to the group chat, and I was like, it's a penis! And so I had to like write a very Midwestern email to my editor to be like, oh, just like one more quick thing, like I just kind of noticed this hand situation. I attached a picture, just like if that could be fixed, that would be great. And it was very readily addressed, thank goodness.
I'm so glad I asked the question.
Other questions that folks have, things you want to know.
You made it sound like you got into it kind of through reading during COVID. So when did this project first like actually start and like get a little like traction with your own like energy and effort?
Yeah. I guess I probably started reading romance in like 2018. I read a lot of it during COVID. I started writing this book in like March or April 2021. And I went through lots and lots of drafts of like, is it first person? Is it third person? Is it, you know, how do I want to tell this story? And yeah, so it started a little while ago.
How do you decide first person, third person? What goes through your mind to?
Yeah, third person just feels very comfortable to me because of the way I learned how to do writing in college. And I feel like it was easier for me to be able to explain the awkwardness of the situation with a little distance and to like make some of the observations that I make just as a writer in general, and keep my voice sort of there. But I know a lot of people love first person. I try to do very close third, so you still feel like you're very connected to the characters, you understand their thought process, but it's in third person.
I'd say for me, first person just is the natural way I write. So if I write in third, it takes a lot of sort of effort to craft it that way, whereas first comes very naturally, kind of. And I think that's how a lot of authors are. And I've asked my editor, like, oh, like it seems like third is kind of what's coming up, and present tense is what's really popular now. And she's like, don't worry about it, just write what you want to write. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Editor has spoken.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one serious and one not serious.
Yeah.
So the serious one is not serious, but like, how do you know when it's done? Like how, like maybe in like the drafting and like probably there's deadlines that play into that, but like as someone who's creative, how do you know like this is done now?
Yeah, we can each answer this one too. I like to go through one horrible draft and I don't let anyone see it or touch it. You know, I'm someone who I've written 10 full-length book-length projects, and the only reason I can get from word one to the end is by not letting anyone see that first draft. And then I kind of know what I have to wrangle with. And then I go back through and I'm very deliberate, probably with 4 or 5 rounds of edits typically, and I let other people see them at various points, whether it's my agent or some friends, and react to their notes. But at a certain point you have to just say, this is what I can do with it, and if I'm just tweaking 1 or 2 words, then I'm not really, I need to just trust the process at this point and get into my editor's hands for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking about that's sort of my ideal situation. I don't think I've done that since my first book, maybe my second book. I've put out 11 in 5 years, and so it's kind of, it's done on deadline. Not that's when the story is complete and perfect, but that's when I make myself comfortable with showing it to my editor, my agent, or whoever needs to see it. And then of course you do about a year of editing after that. But yeah, in my ideal world, there is a 0 draft, and then intentional, and then it's stretched out. But I also think that writing is so iterative, and something I always tell new writers is to remember that idea that the only thing a first draft has to do is exist. And I think that's a pretty good lesson for life as well. That idea that if you're striving for perfect, you will never finish. Because my debut novel did pretty well. It came out, I wrote it 7 years ago, it came out 5 years ago. If I could edit it 14 more times, wouldn't it just be perfect? But, you know, because there's always something else you could tweak or change. So it's interesting because done, for me, really has been, it's due. And then we edited it 4 times, and I'm like, well, I can still fix it up until past pages, which I'll get, like, tomorrow on my next book. And then it's done because it's done, because it has to go to print, because you're working sort of in this industry. So it's interesting to think about it that way. But yeah, perfect doesn't exist, and I don't know that done really exists either. You're kind of finished.
Yeah. Good question. And then less serious question.
Is there a dog in it in the book?
Is there a dog? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's several dogs. The sister is actually like the sister of the main female character is a Bernedoodle breeder in Iowa near Walnut.
It's very specific.
It's very specific because at the time I was desperately obsessed with the idea of getting a Bernedoodle. I'd never been a dog owner. My husband had never been a dog owner, and I had finally convinced him, like, we're going to get a dog. We're going to get a dog. This is going to happen. We got on the list for a breeder puppy, and then I realized, like, I don't think he has the patience for a puppy, and also, look at all these big rescue dogs. Like, so I was able to convince him to adopt instead, and we were able to go through the ARL. So the obsession for Bernedoodles still exists in the sister character. But even in the book, the couple adopts a dog at the end. Because we should adopt and not shop if possible.
Yes.
Even with a good ethical breeder, it is nice to save the puppies that there already are.
Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't had a dog, at least in a major
Now
role,
you do.
until my next one. My next one has 2 dogs. But I've had a cat, And I am not a cat person. Never been a cat. I'm allergic to cats, but I wrote a hairless cat into a book, and now I want one. And my husband's like, hard pass. We live in Iowa, and you have to put them in sweaters. But I was like, but it's so cute, nuggly. Like a little chicken cutlet. So animals in books are interesting because they provide this like great, rich relationship, but then I also get furious in books when they're like, we have a dog, and then they never mention feeding the dog. They never have to get home to walk the dog.
Yep, never.
They run off to Tahiti, and there's no mention of the dog, and
Yeah.
kind of like have a kid.
Kind of like a kid.
Different, but
There's also a hedgehog in this book, so hedgehog representation is important. And it's a rat. Lots of rat discussion as well. I don't think that's usually so important for people.
Are there other questions?
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I am a plotter. So I at least Matt Bell has this great book about craft, and it's called like Done in 3 Drafts or something. And he talks about this idea of islands. So you write to the next island. And so when I'm sitting down, I don't like do an outline of like absolutely every event that will happen in a book, but I generally have a sense of direction of where I'm going with enough space on the boat between the islands for the characters to surprise me. And sometimes they'll veer completely off course and we just go with it. But I do try to plot somewhat, or else I just won't keep writing.
In my heart, I am a pantster. That's how I wrote my first 2 books before I was published. And I love that. Like sitting down and you're just like, I wonder what's going to happen. And then a book shows up. Like I love that. That's counter to how I live my life. But I love to write that way. And I've written tons of like short fiction and short stories and all of that kind of in that way. But in traditional publishing, which is how all my books are published, they make you give them a plan before they give you any money. And so now I have had to, out of necessity, become a plotter. But I usually abandon my plot pretty quickly, and that's why I do a lot of editing. But I do love just that idea of sitting down and figuring out where it'll go. But the mechanics of plotting, I am enamored with. The spreadsheetedness of it, and like the exactness that you can get to, speaks to my heart and soul. I just want to like plot books for other people and then write my own.
I do love the times when I've sat down like with my note cards and like tacked up note. That never works for me. That's like too much rigor. But
I like to think it'll work, and then I abandon the note cards, and I get like, I used to plot very deeply, like the first like 40%, and then I'd follow my plot, and I was like, this is great. And then I would forget that the plot even existed, and then at like 80%, I'm like, where am I going? What is happening here? And that, if you're a writer, that's a bad system. I don't recommend it.
We were just talking about dogs in books.
Yeah. Any other questions?
If you were to pick your dream narrators when you get this book on audio, who would you put?
I'm obsessed. So the audiobook's out. It's on. It's out right now, and I'm obsessed with the male narrator. The female narrator did great as well. No shame to her at all. She's. I don't know if you know Patty Murin at all. She's like a Broadway actress. She was Anna in Frozen on Broadway. She was really great. But the male narrator in this is Grayson Owens, and he is so funny. Like I listened to the narration and maybe so now I can't picture any voice but his when I think about this book. Yeah.
I am super picky with my narrators. All my books have audio, and I'm like high maintenance with the producer, but she kind of likes me, so she lets me be high maintenance and say like Teddy Hamilton has done a bunch of mine. I have a hero who's British, and the only reason he's British is because I wanted Shanice to narrate one of my books, because I'm a Shaniac, and I love Shanice. I met him once. His voice touched my face. He's amazing. Jacoby Diem has done one of mine. January Lavoie does a bunch of mine. So I think if you listen to audiobooks a lot, and that's how I consume a lot of literature, I know I hear as I'm writing, I hear my books. So I was driving up to Minnesota and listening to a David Sedaris book. And I love David Sedaris. I adore his books. I've listened to all of them. But he narrates his own. And I was also drafting a book. And so when I got to the hotel that night and I was working on it, what I heard in my voice was David Sedaris narrating my romance novel. Which I don't know how to communicate to him, how delighted that would make me, but it is so funny. But
He'll be here in October. You can come talk.
yeah, I could tell him this. But I think it's interesting because you sometimes get your dream narrators. Like I have, just said I really want this person, and then sometimes the producers can get them, and it's sort of amazing.
I think it depends on whether you get the dual narration or just one. Like, if I'm only going to have one narrator, I want Julia Wayland because she can do men. Like, she does amazing male voices. But if you're allowed to have the both, I want to do duets someday. Those duet audiobooks are insane. I love them.
Very
Devon was my favorite one that I had listened to recently in duet. They're really great.
Do you have a favorite? You like your Shaniac?
Absolutely, but I'm listening to a lot of Connor Crace lately.
Oh, Connor Crace is
And
good.
Aiden Snow.
I like Aiden Snow. Do you like Jason Clark?
Yes.
Who was the other person who? Well, I love Joe Arden's voice.
I had to say goodbye.
Yeah, okay. He did one of mine right before everything happened, but his similar voice. And Zachary Weber, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Or Jacob Morgan.
Yes, laughed hysterically at Lights Out. Like,
Yeah, he was so good.
yeah,
I do think in romance it's interesting. We give a lot of play to men romance narrators, but not the women romance narrators who are so incredibly talented. Do get so
Generally,
like.
so great.
Andy Art and CJ Bloom are both pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Emma Lodgy did my last one, and it was actually her very first fiction book. So she knew the producer, and the producer said, "Hey, can I have somebody do a recording for you? It's her debut." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I listened. I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're perfect!" And like knocked it out of the park, which was so cool to see, like somebody's like early career.
Yeah.
Well, we are right at about time. So maybe the last question I'll ask is, there a book you've read recently that you would recommend to others that they might like?
Yeah.
And if it's kink, you could just grab it right there off the shelf. Right in my line of sight, right over Alyssa's shoulders the whole time.
Taylor. Not that. It's great. I just finished My Best Friend's Honeymoon by Meryl Wilsner. It was fantastic and like very fun plot that you would never expect to exist. A woman, she lives in the Twin Cities. She's like 23 years old. She'd been engaged for 2 years, and her fiance is like, "I'm gonna secretly plan the wedding because she's like seems to not be doing anything about this. So I'm gonna surprise her with this wedding. It's gonna happen next week." Tells the best friend. Best friend's like, "Okay, we'll see how this goes." It doesn't go well, and they decide not to proceed with the wedding. But he has already put down a deposit on this honeymoon in the Caribbean, and so he's like, "Well, you know, I feel terrible about how all this went down. I couldn't go on this honeymoon because I would cry the whole time. So how about you two as best friends go?" And so turns out that they had these sort of feelings for each other all the way along. It's very well done to like show the buildup of their relationship and friendship into this more. It was lovely. I just a very fun romance to read. How about you? What's one you've read recently that you loved?
I was just trying to think of the name of it. Ellie Palmer's new book. It's
the one of the camper.
Yeah, it's about sort of van life, which
Yeah.
is not anything that ever to me is appealing, but she makes it work. And it's a kind of workaholic attorney who ends up having to take a little break because her phone gets wet, and she has to go try to stop her sister from marrying the wrong person. She thinks the wrong person. And her childhood love is a van guy, and then they van up the coast. Or not up the coast because they're in Minnesota. But anyway, it was super fun. It was funny. It was a true like rom-com while still having some depth. And I can't think of the name of it, but it's Ellie Palmer's. It's her sophomore novel, so her first one came out last year. But
Yeah, I can
that one was
picture
really
the
great.
cover.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Let's have a round of applause.
Thank you.
And we'll have a little bit of time for signing and browsing. Again, I'm going to have to buy the kink book because again, it's been in my line of sight this entire day.